America is the richest country in the world. But why does it feel so poor for most Americans? You wake up every morning, you go to work, you grind, you hustle, you do everything they told you to do, and at the end of the month, you're still looking at your bank account wondering where it all went. You're not lazy. You're not irresponsible. You're not making bad choices. And yet, somehow, it never seems to be enough. The rent went up again. The groceries cost more than they did 6 months ago. Your car needs a repair you can't afford. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this quiet, terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, you're never going to catch up. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. Millions of Americans are living that exact same reality right now. And today, we're going to talk about why. Not the surface level, feel-good answer they give you on the news. Not that just work harder and save more advice that doesn't hold up when you're already working 3 jobs. We're going to go deeper. We're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden cost of living in the so-called richest country on earth. But before we do, if you're new here, welcome to Finance Stories. This channel exists for people like you, people who are tired of being lied to about money, about the economy, about why the system feels so broken. We break it all down in plain English. No jargon, no fluff. So if that's what you're looking for, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because what we're about to get into today is something every American needs to hear. Let's get into it. The United States of America has the largest economy in the world. Full stop. No debate there. As of right now, the US GDP sits at over $27 trillion. 27 trillion. That number is so large, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. America produces more wealth than any other nation in human history, and yet, nearly 40% of Americans say they couldn't cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. $400. That's not a medical emergency. That's a busted water heater. That's a broken phone. That's a last-minute plane ticket to see a sick parent. And 4 out of 10 Americans would be in financial distress trying to cover it. How does that happen in the richest country on earth? That's the question. And the answer is going to make you angry. It's supposed to. Let's start with the data, because the numbers don't lie even when the people presenting them do. Since 1971, worker productivity in the United States has increased by 109%. 109%. That means the average American worker today produces more than twice as much economic value per hour worked than their parents or grandparents did 50 years ago. Twice as much output. Twice as much wealth generated for the economy. You know how much wages went up in that same time period? Adjusted for inflation? 41%. Not twice as much. Not even close. 41%. Productivity doubled. Wages went up by less than half of that. So where did the other 68 percentage points go? Where did all that extra value that workers created actually end up? It went to the top. It went to shareholders. It went to executives. It went to stock buybacks and dividends and bonuses for people who were already wealthy. And the workers who actually produced that value, they got left behind. They got a raise that didn't keep up with the cost of living. A 401k, that depends on a stock market they don't control. And a promise that if they just kept working hard, someday it would all pay off. That someday never came for most of them. And that's just wages. Let's talk about healthcare, because this one will genuinely stop you cold. The United States spends more money on healthcare per person than any other developed nation on the planet. More than Canada. More than Germany. More than Japan, France, or any Scandinavian country. We spend roughly $12,000 per person per year. That is nearly twice what the average wealthy nation spends. And what do we get for all that money? We get a system where a single hospital stay, not a catastrophic illness, just a regular hospitalization, can cost tens of thousands of dollars, where an ambulance ride runs you $3,000 before they've treated you for anything, where insulin, a medication that has existed for over 100 years, costs 10 times more in the United States than it does in Canada for the exact same product made by the same companies. Medical debt is now the leading cause of personal bankruptcy in this country. Not gambling, not reckless spending, medical debt. People who got sick went to the hospital and came out the other side financially destroyed through no fault of their own. And the cruelest part, most of them had insurance. They paid their premiums every single month, and it still wasn't enough. That is a uniquely American experience. You will not find it in Norway. You will not find it in Switzerland. Only here. And then there's student debt. Total student loan debt in the United States has crossed $1.7 trillion. An entire generation was told by their parents, by their teachers, by every institution in their lives that if they went to college and worked hard, they would be okay. So they borrowed tens of thousands of dollars to get an education, and they graduated into a job market where wages hadn't kept up with the cost of living, where the jobs their degrees were supposed to unlock often didn't pay enough to cover both loan payments and rent. Many of them are still paying off those loans in their 30s, their 40s, some into their 50s. They can't buy homes. They can't build savings because a huge chunk of every paycheck is going back to the financial institutions that lent them money to pursue the dream they were sold. And while individual Americans are drowning in debt, so is the nation itself. The U.S. national debt has surpassed $34 trillion. The interest payments alone cost more than the entire defense budget. We are telling individual citizens that their personal financial struggles are their own fault. These numbers are not an accident. They are not bad luck. We are a nation paying a massive monthly minimum payment on a credit card we can never seem to pay off, while they are the result of specific decisions made by specific people over several decades. And we need to talk about that. But before we go further, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something real. Because if you're watching this, there's a good chance that what I've been describing isn't just abstract statistics to you. It's your life. Maybe you're one of the people working multiple jobs and still not getting ahead. Maybe you're carrying student debt that feels like it's following you everywhere. Maybe you've had a medical scare and spent as much time worrying about the bill as you did about your health. Maybe you've looked at the housing market and felt a kind of despair that's hard to put into words because the math simply doesn't work, no matter how many times you run it. In the comments section of our last video, the richest country is pretty mid now. Thousands of you shared your stories, and they were heartbreaking, infuriating, and they needed to be heard. So let me share some of what you told us. One person wrote, "I work 3 jobs, and I still can't afford a down payment on a house in the city where I grew up. The neighborhood I was raised in has been bought up by investment firms and turned into rentals. I'm a stranger in my own hometown." Another comment said, "Private equity came in and bought the small grocery store my family shopped at for 30 years. They raised prices, cut staff, and closed it 2 years later when it stopped being profitable enough. Now the nearest grocery store is 40 minutes away." Someone else wrote, "I had to choose between keeping my health insurance and leaving a toxic job. I stayed in a job that was destroying my mental health because I couldn't afford to lose my coverage. Work or die." That's literally the choice they give you. And then there was this one, and I want you to really hear it. "I'm in my late 20s, educated, work full-time, do everything right, and I genuinely feel like there is no future for me. Not because I'm depressed, because the math doesn't add up. I've run the numbers every way I can. I cannot see a path to a comfortable life." That's not pessimism. That's arithmetic. That last one hit hard because it captures something that a lot of people feel but are afraid to say out loud, because we've been conditioned to believe that if you're struggling, it means you're failing. It means you're not working hard enough, not smart enough, not disciplined enough. But what if that's not true? What if the struggle isn't a reflection of individual failure, but of a system that is structurally designed to concentrate wealth at the top and leave everyone else competing for the scraps? That's not a comfortable idea, but it might be a true one, and the data backs it up. Now, Let's talk about how this actually works. Because understanding the mechanism is how you stop feeling crazy and start feeling clear. One of the most important and least discussed concepts in modern economics is financialization. Financialization is what happens when an economy stops being primarily about producing things, goods, services, real value, and starts being primarily about making money from money. About speculation, about financial instruments, about finding ways to extract wealth rather than create it. 50 years ago, if you owned a factory, you made money by building things and selling them. Your success depended on good products and satisfied customers. Workers were essential because without workers, nothing got made. Today, a significant portion of the wealthiest people in America make their money not by building things, but by owning things. By buying assets, real estate, companies, financial instruments, and watching them appreciate. Or by buying companies, loading them with debt, cutting costs to maximize short-term profit, and selling before the damage becomes visible. This is what private equity does. This is what happened to countless local businesses, regional newspapers, community hospitals, and neighborhood stores across America. Not because those businesses were failing, but because they were profitable enough to buy, extract value from, and move on. The workers who depended on those jobs, the communities those businesses served, they're not part of the calculation. They're externalities. Stock buybacks are a perfect example of how this extraction works at scale. For most of American history, companies were not allowed to buy back their own stock. It was considered market manipulation. That rule was changed in 1982. And since then, corporations have taken profits that used to go to wages, benefits, and reinvestment and used them to buy back shares to inflate stock prices for shareholders. In 2023 alone, S&P 500 companies spent over $800 billion on stock buybacks. $800 billion that could have gone to raises, to hiring, to building better products, instead went to making wealthy shareholders wealthier. Meanwhile, the workers who generated those profits got stagnant wages and a lecture about financial responsibility. And then there are monopolies. The United States used to have strong antitrust laws built on a simple idea. Competition is good for consumers and workers. When companies compete, they offer better products and better wages. When one company dominates a market, they don't have to do any of that. For the last 40 years, antitrust enforcement has been largely abandoned. When 4 companies control 80% of the beef you eat, they can coordinate pricing in ways that cost American families hundreds of dollars a year. When 3 companies control most of the country's broadband internet, you'll pay some of the highest prices for some of the slowest speeds in the developed world, because there's no competition forcing them to do better. Concentration of market power becomes concentration of economic power, and economic power inevitably becomes political power, which is why the policies that could fix these problems keep not getting passed. Now let's look at what it looks like when a country actually does this differently. Norway, Switzerland, Denmark. These are not communist countries. They have robust market economies and significant private wealth, but they have made different choices about how to distribute the gains from growth. In Norway, a sovereign wealth fund built from oil revenues worth over $1 trillion generates returns invested back into the public good. Healthcare is universal. Higher education is free or nearly free. Workers have genuine bargaining power. The result: Norway has a higher median standard of living than the United States, not a higher average. High and median, the typical Norwegian is better off than the typical American, even though America's total wealth is far greater. These countries haven't eliminated inequality, but they've ensured that economic growth actually reaches the people who generate it, not just the people who own the assets. America used to be closer to that model. In the 1950s and 1960s, the top marginal tax rate was above 90%. Unions represented 1/3 of the workforce. Corporate executives made roughly 20 times what their average worker made, not 300 times. Infrastructure was being built. Higher education was affordable, and the economy was growing at rates we haven't seen since. Those policies were changed deliberately over decades, and the results are what we're living with now. If this video is hitting home, if you're feeling that mix of anger and clarity, this is exactly the moment to make your voice heard. Drop a comment below and tell us your story. Tell us what you're dealing with, what you're feeling, what you think needs to change. And if you haven't already, hit that like button right now. It helps finance stories reach more people who need to hear this conversation. Every single like makes a difference. We're building something here, and it only works if you're part of it. There is a narrative in America, deeply embedded in our culture, in our politics, in the stories we tell about ourselves, that if you're struggling, it's your fault. You didn't work hard enough. You made bad choices. You didn't save enough, invest enough, hustle enough. And if you're doing well, it's because you earned it. You were smarter, more disciplined, more deserving. That narrative serves a very specific purpose. It keeps people looking at each other instead of looking at the system. It keeps workers competing with each other for the scraps instead of questioning why there are scraps in the first place. It keeps the conversation focused on individual behavior instead of structural conditions. And it is, in many ways, a lie. Not entirely. Individual choices matter. Financial literacy matters. Personal responsibility matters. But personal responsibility cannot fix a system that structurally extracts wealth from workers and concentrates it at the top. You cannot save your way out of stagnant wages. You cannot invest your way out of a healthcare system that can bankrupt you in a single month. You cannot hustle your way into housing affordability when investment firms are buying up single-family homes by the thousands and renting them back to you at prices that ensure you can never build equity. You cannot out-discipline a system that was designed, not accidentally, not through neglect, but deliberately, to work against you. And that is the moment of clarity that changes everything, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This isn't a bug in the system. It's the system working exactly as intended. Let that land for a second, because I know that's a hard thing to sit with. It means the problem isn't you. It means the solution isn't something you can fix alone in your own life by making smarter choices or working longer hours. It requires something bigger. It requires collective awareness, political will, and the willingness to fundamentally rethink how we structure an economy that is, by any objective measure, extraordinarily wealthy. The wealth is real. $27 trillion a year is real. The problem was never how much wealth exists. The problem is where it goes. And who decided that? So let me leave you with this. If America is the richest country in the world, and it is, why does the nurse who kept people alive through a pandemic struggle to pay her own medical bills? Why does the teacher who shapes the next generation work a second job to afford rent? Why does the factory worker who builds products that generate billions in profit for shareholders have to choose between fixing his car and filling his prescriptions? Why does a country with $27 trillion in annual economic output have 40% of its citizens unable to handle a $400 emergency? The answer isn't that America doesn't have enough money. The answer is that the money isn't going where it should. It's not a mystery. It's not bad luck. It's not the inevitable result of global forces beyond anyone's control. It is the result of choices. Specific choices made by specific people over a specific period of time. Choices that were made can be unmade. Policies that were changed can be changed again. Systems that were designed to work one way can be redesigned to work another. That's not naive optimism. That's just history. It happened before. The question is whether enough people understand clearly what the problem actually is and care enough to demand something different. If America is the richest country, why do most Americans feel broke? The answer isn't how much wealth exists. It's how that wealth is distributed. And until that changes, the richest country in the world will keep feeling, for most of the people living in it, pretty poor. You're watching this video. That means you're asking the question. And asking the right question is always the first step. If this video gave you something to think about, drop it in the comments. Tell us what hit hardest. Tell us what you want us to cover next. And if you haven't hit that like button yet, do it now. It helps finance stories reach every person out there who needs to hear this and doesn't know it yet. Your like, your comment, your share. That's how this message travels. That's how we grow this conversation into something that actually matters. And if you're ready to keep going, the next Finance Stories video is right there on your screen. Watch it now, because this is just the beginning, and the next one goes even deeper.